Hello and welcome back to Mask of the Plague Doctor by Peter Parrish with me, Barden. Right, we're on chapter 11 and it feels like we are kind of getting certainly towards the end of the game. Things are starting to come to a head and we're starting to make discoveries and things like that. So let's continue on and see how it goes here. So these hollow eyes seek slumber deep. Be sure to hold this to your head, Fastrada, you say, demonstrating by pressing the cloth, swaddled mixture, against the woman's ear. I could find no barley, but the Bethany and vervain will ease your discomfort. The small copper pot with which you boil the concoction sits upon the simple cooking fire at the centre of this tiny dwelling, still sizzling. Vervain, she replies, holding the bundle in place at your instruction. Does the sage's herb still flourish in these dark seasons? You smile beneath your mask. Without fail, every town in this region refers to the plant as the herb of their local deity. We are fortunate that it flowers within the walls of Thornback Hollow, you tell her. A spot close to the northern wall was found by a colleague of mine before the snows came. I thank you, Fastrada says, for coming at my request and tending an old woman's ailments. She underplays the severity. When first you arrived, the pain in her ear prevented her from even standing. The waking death may direct my time, you say, but other maladies do not rest while it is ascendant. Ioko swore to send word of any developments with the white lichen, and Fastrada's home lies only a short distance east of the sanctuary. Still, your mind is not at ease. The feeling that you should return to the Oaken Towers is an incessant intrusion. If I may ask, she pauses, her frail frame hunched upon the chair, in the clutches of pain or tense indecision. Go on, you say, irritated at your own impatience. My nephew. He has a flapping tongue. Says the mare is gone. Is that so? Okay, Variex is streaming. Okay, once I've done this, I'm definitely gonna go check that out. And you should go check him out as well. He's how I actually found this game. But let's continue on. 2 cycles of the winter sun have passed, yet every variant of rumor still circulates among the populace. Okay, so 2 cycles, so 2 days since he spoke true. Sybil Blake has been overthrown in glorious uprising. Lasted as so. It is true, but I believe her departure shall mark a new beginning. In prison, no less than she deserves. Yep, this is the one for us. It is true, but oh, I hate this. I've mentioned it before. I hate that thing comes up anytime my mouse goes down there. I believe there's a way to get rid of it, but you have to mess around with scripts and stuff. I'm not doing that. Okay, anyway, less distraction, more Mask of the Plague Doctor, please. It is true, but I believe her departure shall mark a new beginning. Fastrada smiles. Your optimism is like a warm spring morning, she says. Soothes my old bones right through. Good to hear, you reply with a nod of thanks. Oh, but I do worry, though, she continues, her expression already sliding back to a look of vexation. With no mayor, who shall run the town? Who will save us from this plague? Aviva Frith will care for the people, you reply. My fellow plague doctors and I can be only days, perhaps hours from a breakthrough. I can sense it. If you believe it to be so, then I trust you, she says, though her voice betrays doubt. Remember, keep the medicine bundle tight to your ear, you say as you show yourself out, till the pain starts to relent. A sliver of pale winter sunshine cuts across the main street of Thornback Hollow. You feel it warm the back of your neck as you cross through it and pass once more into shadow. In the middle distance you see a ragged and stooped pioneer scouring the doorways and foundations of the adjoining dwellings, searching no doubt for materials to barter or unwitting wildlife for sustenance. The rest of the town appears calm at this early hour. You put your ear to the breeze, but no sound of skirmish carry on today's air. Few remained openly loyal to Sybil Blake once power changed hands. If there are any counter-revolutionaries, they have wisely opted to bide their time in silence. Another rogue figure beyond the scavenger waves you closer. There is unusual excitement to the familiar boar-masked man, and it causes you to quicken your steps. "Gamel!" Ayoko shouts as you get closer. "The lichen! Come on!" Some of his words are lost in the wind, but there's little doubt as to the subject of his enthusiasm. Rush to hear the news. Seeing your pace increase at his signal, Ayoko waits for you to reach him. He maintains a long stride, and by the time you catch up, sanctuary gates are in sight. Ayoko doesn't wait for you to reach him. Okay. The subject of our test, you say, between recuperating breaths. Are they... "Two showed no ill effects," he replies, "but the one who received the highest dose..." The surgeon's gait does not falter as the two of you pass beneath the entrance archway and cross the courtyard. "Come on," he urges. "Alice is waiting in the laboratory." Your other companion is pacing the cellar floor as you enter. "Ayoko, Gamel," she exclaims. "We did it! I knew we would, but this... Oh, it feels absurd to be delighted in the onset of a plague, but we did it! We found the source!" "At a cost," Ayoko says. "Let's not forget." Alex gives a somber nod, but her restless hands betray her continued embrace. "I'm sorry about the rabbit," you tell him. "I know you're fond of them." "Poor thing can't rest," he replies, his voice quiet. "Won't even ever know what a service it has done for us." "Is there anything we can do?" The question seems futile, but you feel compelled to ask. "Same thing we can do for those in the infirmary. Find a cure. If not, I'll let the creature imbibe the dignity of a peaceful end." "Then what now?" "Now," Alice says, "we apply this knowledge to further study." She rubs her forearm in thought. "It may be nothing, but the rabbit to whom we administer a low dose of white lichen appeared to develop a brief and minor irritation around its nose and mouth. I presume we're taking strict precaution with whatever remains of our lichen sample." "There's barely any left," she says. "Stems and powder, a little more." We're not communing with the dweller. Ayoko and you and I should examine the deceased for external signs of the lichen. Alice and I should scour medical texts for any mention of the lichen or its properties. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to scour. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because it's a game, and you have to have choices. But it would make more sense to be able to say, Ayoko, examine the dead for signs of the lichen. Alice, you're the best with text. You scoured books. I'm going to go get people and send them to get more of the lichen. But you've got to have choices in games, right? So this is the one that we're going to go for. Alice and I should scour medical texts for any mention of this lichen or its properties. Has the time for books not passed? Ayoko says. I won't deny the worth of written knowledge, but we've made strides by harvesting physical samples and undertaking tests, not burying ourselves in pages. Alice sighs. It pains me to say it, but he may be right. She gestures to the uneven stack of books on one of the benches. I can tell you the context of each. They will not serve us here. Then we must revisit tomes which you are not familiar, we reply. The mayor's library, she asks. It's possible we may not be allowed to... If not there, then the sanctuary archives. I know you've perused their documents and found little besides lists of inventory and dry records. But that was before we had a specific topic to search for, you insist. We'd be studying these parchments and archives with fresh eyes. Alice's head begins a slow nod. There's a sense in what you say. I may have been too swift to dismiss the value of these records. Very well, Gamel. We shall undertake a second reading. Somebody knocks on the doorframe. The sound makes you turn. Standing in the doorway, you see a man with a hand against his side. He's out of breath and takes his other hand off the frame, holding it aloft to signal you should give him a moment. The red sash tells you he was sent by Alviva Frit. The Thornback Council requires your presence at an emergency meeting, he gasps, pointing in your direction. Is this as urgent as it appears, you ask, not wishing to be pulled away from the task at hand. We've made a critical discovery and may be at the cusp of more. That's splendid news and quite apposite for this gathering. Those in attendance will be addressing the critical food shortage affecting the town and debating appropriate punishment for Sybil Blake and her ilk. The messenger tells you, finding his voice once more, as well as hearing proposals for the cessation of the plague. Take this opportunity, Alice says when it occurs you motion of her hand. Since the town's new council is so enamoured of you, tell them we require entry to the manor library. The messenger clears his throat. The itinerary I was asked to convey did not include petitions for access to. Ask anyway, she says, cutting across his bluster. I'll see if the sanctuary archives have any covers worth turning. Accompanied by the messenger, you depart once again for the upper quarter. At the manor once more. So I hope Ioko does take it upon himself to do one of the other two options. You see labourers crossing back and forth across the frozen manor lawn, carrying boxes, barrels and containers. A woman in a pair of tall boots shouts directions. All food to the designated parties and storage holes, she declares, pointing the way toward a mansion adjacent to the mayoral manor. Clothing is to be collected at Barlow House. A man with a pair of woolen coats draped over each shoulder alters his route, heading instead towards a large dwelling at the southern tip of the semicircle of homes. A pair of sentries lounge over the manor entrance, one wearing a red sash, the other in the dark blue of Blake's old militia. You couldn't swear to them being awake. That you, Tolly? Your accompanying messenger asks one of the guards, tilting his head in an effort to get a better look. Haven't got much sharper since you switched sides, I see. During a siege, follow where the food goes, the guard replies, opening one eye to peer at the two of you. Here to see the council, I assume. A languid arm emerges from inside his blue tunic, waves you on, and is tucked back inside. Tell him to up our rations. You pass through the entrance hall, its wooden floor still stained by blood. One of Sybil Blake's heraldic banners peeks out from beneath the sheets of red cloth, tossed and draped over the upper balcony. Another lies abandoned and tattered in the shadows of a side corridor. From the dining room you hear raised voices. The messenger directs you towards them. And without our labour, you have no timber. Alviva Frith leans on her cane behind the grand oaken table, flanked by Malay, another guild member you do not recognise. Opposite her, his arms folded, sits a man wearing the attire of a Thornback merchant and a sour expression. We will not continue to pay shipping fees, warehouse rents, and exorbitant tributes to the crown at the expense of our people, Alviva continues, nodding with recognition at your arrival. Besides which, we have more urgent matters to address. Welcome, Doctor, she says, raising her cane a short distance in greeting. Your presence will be most critical at this gathering. Frankly, I would rather be attending to the plague. But you are, Doctor, she replies. The decisions made in this room may shape the final course of this disease. The crown grows restless. If this sickness lingers, Barnmoreland would bring ruin to our liberated streets. Very well, you say. What do you require of me? The Council bestows upon you full emergency medical powers, she announces, to murmurs of approval. When you are outside of this hall, any action you deem necessary for the health of the town may be carried out with our tacit authority. If any would seek to stand in your way, present them with this decree. Rising with the supportive aid of the oaken table, Aviva approaches you with parchment in hand. She hands you the edict with a slight incline of her head, then makes her way back to her seat. My colleagues and I will use this power wisely. Oh, that's me, actually. My colleagues and I will use this power wisely, you assured the room. Indeed, we already have good news to relay. The source of the plague has been confirmed. We were in the process of embarking on our next steps when I was summoned to Your words are drowned out by other voices in the room. Attendees turn to one another, sparking into discussion by your revelation. Aviva bangs the head of her cane against the table's edge, calling for calm. You speak of your expedition beneath Thornback Hollow, emphasizing that it was prompted by suspicions that Sybil Blake was profiting off a breach in the town quarantine. The room was quiet, save for the gentle spit and crackle of a fireplace, as you describe harvesting the white lichen and the process of experimentation. Which is how we have deduced that this substance, in high enough doses, can cause the waking death, you conclude. And how do you intend to proceed? Aviva asks. My colleagues and I have settled on our next course of action, you reply, explaining the decision you made before your departure for the manor. Very good, Aviva says. Let us hope this progress continues apace. Aviva clears her throat. As if the waking dead were not trouble enough, many in our town are near starvation, Aviva says. Guild members were reduced to stripping the bark from the remaining timber. Every animal hide vanished from the tannery. The sadness in her expression gives way to anger. And while the people debase themselves, eating rodents and dirt, Sybil Blake and her cohorts have their pick of meats and delicacies. No longer, Malay shouts, raising her fist. Her gesture is met with rousing cheers from several at the table. You note that those in wealthier attire are more restrained in their celebration, or do not respond at all. Sybil Blake will answer for her crimes, Aviva says, waiting for the noise to subside. But let us not inflate her influence beyond its reach. We hold power now, and the responsibility of feeding Thornback Hollow lies with us. I saw members of the guild transporting food across the manor lawn, you say. Is that not enough to delay the crisis? For a day or two, perhaps more, if it is distributed with caution, she replies. Moreland's decision to cease deliveries of supplies from outside has left us in dire circumstances. Look around the room. The brief moment of joy ignited by Malay's outburst has slipped back into sullen gloom. In the silence you sense an opportunity to put forward a suggestion of your own. Okay, so let's rule some things out first. So number 3, I recommend requisitioning every morsel of food in your pub quarter and mercantile district. That's a no. I have an expedient proposal to distribute food to new militia recruits, as Sybil Blake did. No. I encourage a triage approach to distributing food to those most likely to survive. I think that's a no as well. So then, it's between the top 2. So, culling the rabbits, or imploring the wealthiest to provide from their own supplies. I think the wealthiest should themselves, they should be allowed to make the offer themselves. I shouldn't be making it on their behalf. So I think that's out too. And I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy who looks after the rabbits did say that if it came to it, culling the rabbits would be okay, as long as some survive. So let's say that. It's just a systematic cull of the rabbit warrens for their meat. There's a significant source of food on the very hillside upon which this matter rests, you say. It may exhaust the rabbit population, but such a risk seems worthwhile in a situation as dire as this. Indeed so, Aviva says. Those creatures can always recover their numbers. Our citizens may not be so fortunate. One word of caution, you add. The test confirming the source of the plague was conducted on rabbits. It transpires that they are susceptible to the disease. And you would still dare suggest eating them? Would that not put every one of us in danger? In ordinary circumstances, you begin before hesitating. It is a further risk, there is no doubt, but if the rabbits can be captured and observed, as long as the animal is capable of sleep, it is not infected. If you encounter any in a state of perpetual wakefulness, take care to burn the corpse. That complicates the process. I guess Alviva, so something Alviva. Okay, don't worry about that. But it should still be possible. You nod in agreement. Waste no time, she says, summoning a member of the guild to her side. Organize small teams, relay the instructions, catch as many rabbits as you are able. Brisk footsteps fade into the distance as the sentry is dismissed. Another matter is at hand. Over Alviva's shoulder, you see a servant's door open and a figure in a red guild sash steps out. She crosses a short distance to the guild head's side, a ring of large keys on her belt jingling with each step. Attention drawn by the sound, Alviva turns her head and mouths a greeting you do not hear. The two of them exchange words and nods before the figure clicks and strides back toward the entrance from which they emerged. The foot of Alviva's cane strikes the floor twice in succession, quieting the pockets of discussion around the room. Before the assembled council of... Oh, it's her, right? Yeah. Before the assembled council of Thornback Hollow, the tyrant Sybil Blake will now be judged for her crimes, she declares. Bring her forth. Dressed in clean, simple robes and with her hands bound, the former mayor is ushered into the room by the woman with the ring of keys. Sybil keeps her head held high, looking above the heads of the assembled citizens as she's walked around to the foot of the oaken table. As they come to a halt, she casts a withering look at her guard, who takes a short step back. You are accused of... Alviva begins. It is you who has violently ousted a crown official from their position, Sybil says in an unwavering voice. You are a traitor with no authority. Any who follow this woman have no right to judge me. If she had more to say, the words are drowned out by the sound of Alviva's cane. The tyrant will be silent, the guild leader declares. You are accused of hoarding food during a siege. Providing for myself or my family is not a crime. Silence! Grievous oppression of the town's citizenry. Theft. Nonsense. Theft of property and breaking of a crown-sanctioned quarantine. Not a word of truth, Sybil replies, her tone loud and defiant. A feeble cover for your treasonous actions. Alviva raises her hand. It takes you a moment to realize they are gesturing you forward. Doctor, can you describe what you learned about a smuggling operation beneath this town? Relay what you know. There was an organization promising escort to people out of town in exchange for property and possessions, you say, taking care to detail only what you know. We found recent remains in the tunnels beneath Thornback Hollow that suggest many of those people never made it beyond the walls. A man named Skinner informed us that his residence had been used to house prospective escapees on the mayor's orders. Preposterous, Sybil scoffs. Hearsay and rumour. You have the resources and the ambition, you say. Everything pointed back to you. Sybil Blake, Alviva says with quiet rage. For the abuses and injustice of your rule, you are condemned to death by the citizenry of Thornback Hollow. Are there any here who would speak against this judgment? Traitors! The old mare shouts, glaring at those seated in attendance, whom she may once have considered loyal. Traitors and betrayers! This trial is a farce! When the crown hears of this, you'll all burn! The guard begins to drag her away. Yeah, I think we're gonna, again, we're sympathetic. So I think we're gonna, even though we don't really like Sybil at all, and she's very hard to like. I suppose that's why she's been written that way, but still we're gonna plead for mercy. Do not do this. Begin your rule with mercy, not a killing. Wait, you say, causing the guard to pause. I do not question Sybil Blake's guilt, but I urge you to reconsider her fate. Your ambition is realized. A council of labourers, farmers and merchants now sits in control of the town. Must more blood be shed in search of vengeance? Listen to the physician, Sybil says, eyes still wide from her invective. He may just save your skin. The guard grasps her arm beneath the shoulder, silencing her. You plead for clemency, Aviva says, ignoring the former mayor and giving you a curious look. For what purpose? Though you are not a citizen of this town, you have witnessed this tyrant's crimes firsthand. No ulterior scheme, no grand plan, you say, spreading your arms apart. I ask for mercy for its own sake. And so your time in charge doesn't begin with an execution. You have an honesty to you that I find admirable, physician. The guild leader looks at you, as if trying to discern some layered truth from the lines and marks upon your mask. She sighs. But the council cannot grant your request. Sybil Blake has squeezed life and riches from the labourers of Thornback Hollow, risked the health of every surrounding town in her greed for property, allowed her militia to suppress dissent wherever it arose. This council is nothing if it does not represent the people, and the people will not accept anything other than death. Now you see, Sybil sneers, when the town demands blood, their ruler must answer. Take her away, Aviva commands, motioning to the guard. See that none visit her before the morrow. Aylwin, the former mayor cries, all trace of smug superiority now absent from her face. She jerks her head back and forth, searching without hope for one who is not present. My son! Do not deny me a last look at my son! Her protestations persist as the guard hauls her away through the servants' doorway. You hear them echo in the corridor for a time, until the last traces of her voice fade into silence. Aviva exchanges words with Malay. You are no doubt eager to return to your medicinal duties, the guild leader says, turning back your way. The council thanks you for your attendance and for providing a voice on matters of import. It has been instructive. Before I leave, you reply, I am curious about your intentions to warn Aylwin Blake. The heir, yes. Oh, sorry. The heir, yes, Aviva says, her eyes darting back Malay's way. There are some concerns within the guild that he remains free. Do not obscure your true thoughts. You fear he may retain designs on the mayoral seat. Nothing fearful about it, Malay scoffs, puffing at her chest. That boy belongs to the old regime. His blood is a threat. Didn't take you as scared of a little blood, Malay, one of the other guild members remarks. That whelp would gut us all as revenge for his dear mummy, she snaps. He has no interest in succeeding his mother, you say. Speak to him beneath the Blake crypt. You will find he has devoted himself to the dweller in thorns. Invoking malevolent deities, Malay exclaims. That's even more cause for vigilance. No matter how you feel about the dweller, Aylwin has done nothing wrong. He's Sybil Blake's heir, Malay insists. I'd have no quarrel with the boy, but he represents... Aylwin Blake is not his mother, you say. He should not be judged as such. All right, silence, Aviva calls. I've heard enough, councillors. Until the boy presents Any direct opposition to our authority, I am content to let him be. We have far more immediate problems than a wayward heir. Thank you, you say, offering a farewell, making your way back to the entrance hall of the manor. As you step out, you hear the guild leader's voice behind you. No pardons for members of Sylvia Blake's militia found to have committed atrocities against our citizens. Tribunals will be scheduled for the coming days. Hurry back to the sentry. We never asked about the books. Why did we not? You're about to step out into the cold when you recall a promise you made to Alice. See? About gaining entry to the manor library. One of the sentries inside the door gives you a puzzled look as you pause, turn and walk in the other direction, mumbling something about books. Another guard leans against the wall of the corridor leading to the library. She stands up straighter as you approach, but makes no effort to brandish a weapon. You supposed to be here? She asks, bobbing her head like a bird in a failed effort to see around the edge of your mask. The new council trusts me to go where I'm needed. You hand over the piece of parchment given to you by Alviva. The guard ceases her curious motions, taking the paper from you and holding it at arm's length. Eyes, she mentions, can see anything at the distance, but up close, just fog. Got any cure for that, mask? Sorry, you reply, shaking your head. Shame. Well, I suppose you have bigger concerns. The sentry hands back your parchment. Looks in order. You're welcome to borrow what you can salvage. What I can salvage? Oh, you didn't hear? She gestures over her shoulder towards the library. Couple of the old mayor's militia retreated in here at the end of the fighting. Heard they were caught, but not before they managed to wreck as much as possible. As you push open the door to the manor library, it strikes a blockage on the other side. Slipping through the gap you've created, you find yourself among toppled shelves, strewn piles of books. A puff of wind rustles through pages and parchments, drawing your attention across the room to where large shards of glass lie beneath a smashed window. Whoever was trapped in here only stopped short of setting a fire. Where you can, you try to work your way around the room on the back of fallen shelves, but there are spots where stepping upon loose tomes is unavoidable. You wince at each crunch of paper, knowing the damage your weight may be doing to the books beneath your feet. A sliver of glass lodged in your boot reminds you why the heavy footwear must remain on. Ignoring the majority of the tomes, you head towards the cabinet of older volumes you saw on your prior visit. The front has been smashed off, removing the need for a key, but to your dismay, only a pair of books remain inside. You spend some time searching the floor for any of the other titles of interest, before resigning yourself to the two that survived in place. Tucking them under your arm, you pick your way back through the wreckage. At the doorway, you pry and shake the collected pieces of glass from your boots, thankfully not to find any serious damage. Depart the manor. As you walk the track that descends from the upper quarter, you look over the western wall of Thornback Hollow towards Baron Moreland's camp. The distance and geography of the land make it difficult to see much beyond the flicker and flap of raised banners, but as you stop and stare, you could swear you see more movement than usual upon the far horizon. The light shifts as denser clouds are blown across the sun, casting long grey shadows over the abandoned farmlands outside the town. You turn your head away and return to the descent. Awaiting you at the base of the hill is a scene of desperation. Scores of malnourished townsfolk have dragged their shivering bodies to the streets, gathering in huddles of 3 or 4, hoping for some sign of relief from the manor houses above. They carry no weapons, and their weakened frames pose little individual threat, but you feel exposed as one of the citizens points towards you, drawing the crowd's attention to your approach. You recall passing a pair of sentries many yards back the slope. Down here you are alone. At first the people seem to shy away from your mask, but as you reach the town's main thoroughfare, a few bolder citizens approach you, begging for food in overlapping voices. My family has not eaten, and so does the guild have care that we are, doctor, please, in need of a bite, just one morsel. More townsfolk begin to surround you. I share some of my own food with them. They probably won't be satisfied with that, but that's because obviously give maybe 3-4 people some food, then what about everybody else? Why did you give that person food and not me? But I think it's on instinct is what we would do. We wouldn't be thinking about the new regime. So it's what we're going to do. Oh, but we're going to get rid of this first. Yeah, so I share some of my own food. Moved by the intense suffering, you search about your person for any meager crumbs. You brought little with you, save for a half-eaten piece of black bread. As you produce the paltry meal, you look again at the number of people converging around you. The second thought comes too late, as a thin boy with skeletal wrists plucks the prize from your hand. In moments he's knocked to the ground by a woman whose clothing flaps loose on her frame in the winter breeze. You try to call for calm as several others rush forward, their eyes hungry, grasping, clawing for just a taste of the foul bread. 2 of the larger townsfolk emerge from the scrum with a mouthful each. The rest are left dejected, tending to bruises and barely able to pull themselves to their feet. You back away, repeating useless apologies as you leave the scene. Hurry away. Yep, as I thought would happen. Back to the sanctuary, you climb a twisting set of stairs, so narrow that the walls press against your shoulders as you ascend. You smile to yourself as you look down to see a lone set of footprints ahead of you in the dust. Alice? You call as you push open the low, arched door at the end of a brief landing. You're about to call again, but instead have to fight off the urge to sneeze as puff of grime from underused hinges finds its way around your mask. The sanctuary archives are not so grand as their name suggests. Dense shelving, a close ceiling, give the room an even more claustrophobic feel than its size deserves. Parchment scrolls and cobweb tomes are stacked in piles, the spines facing inward. Succumbing at last to the dust, you cough and wave your hand in a hopeless effort to disperse the pervasive air of grime and neglect. Oh, Gamel! Alice's masked face leans out from behind one of the shelves. Low down as if seated, she beckons you over. As you round the end of the shelving, you find your colleague sitting cross-legged, surrounded by a crooked tower of books. Spying the volumes beneath your arms, she points at them with interest. From the Manor Library? All I could bring. The uprising did their collection no favours. She makes a sound of annoyance and sucks some air through her teeth. Any other developments? You produce the parchment. We've been granted emergency authority, you say, handing it over for her to peruse. And food is getting even more scarce. Contingencies are in place, but supplies may only last a few more days. Better keep working then, Alice says, passing the parchment back to you. Sybil Blake is to lose her head, you add. More bloodshed, your colleague says, sounding more aggrieved by the impracticality than the act itself. She sighs and motions once more towards the books you carry. Well, set them down. Let us see what we have. You hand over the 2 books for Alice to study in turn. Book of the Civilized, she says. No surprise to see this given a cherished spot in Sybil Blake's collection. Have you read this one? I think I had it read to me long ago. No, but I'm assuming you have. Yeah, that's the one that fits best. It's a compilation of etiquette and other useless decorum, being sure to receive gifts from the powerful with gratitude, stern warnings about never mounting your horse in a hallway, the type of rules beloved by the wealthy. Not of great use for our purpose, then. Alas, no. Alice puts this aside and reaches for your second offering. Let's see. The 4 branches. You watch as she turns a few pages, revealing decorative initials and marginalia. This appears to be a collection of tales from across the realm, she says at last. Fascinating. I recognize some of these works, but not others. You have brought us quite a rarity, Gamel. But will it assist our research, you ask? Well, she replies, I'd sooner have a text dedicated to medicinal techniques, but recordings of oral fables are not without their wisdom, and it is quite beautiful in its design. Sounds like you're trying to spare my feelings. Alice laughs. And it sounds like you had little choice in which books to save, she says. Let's examine the contents of the 4 branches before we discard it. Settle in for some reading. It feels like we maybe made a mistake. But let's see what happens. Have you found anything of interest? Or, it's me actually. Have you found anything of interest? You ask Alice, nodding towards a stack of tomes at her side. Those are the documents I've worked through, she replies. I've learnt a lot about the amount of grain required to feed an expanding religious order, but not much else. Looking about herself for a moment, she reaches back for a thick book, with a plain brown cover. This is my next hope. Fragments from the Golden Legend. Heard of it? You shake your head. It was the Crown's attempt to compile hagiographics of this realm's deities and holy people, she replies, lifting the volume onto her lap. I'm keen to see whether this partial version contains entries for sage or dweller. Anything relating to the town's history, really. It's a slim hope, but... You nod, and the discussion lulls as the two of you concentrate on your respective books. The front cover of the 4 branches is missing. Nor has time been kind to several of the torn and loosened pages. You leaf through with care, letting your eyes linger on the intricate margins as you work through stories of romance and philosophy alike, searching for any clue that may assist your understanding of the waking dead. A short tale about an enchantment named Heneplan holds your attention. Heneplan's greatest desire was to bestow all the world's knowledge upon his 2 daughters, Bjorn and Heenan. To do so, he brewed a potion that would keep them awake at all hours. Bjorn gladly supped from the cauldron, but Heenan was wary of her father's intent and only drank a small amount. That night Bjorn studied the stars while her sister slept. When Henaplan learned of this, he flew into rage and forced Heenan to consume more of his potion. But though she drank deep, when twilight passed, she once again fell into a slumber. Henaplan banished her from their home. Over time, Bjorn grew weak and spoke only in riddles. Distraught, Henaplan took his own potion, devoting every hour of the day and night to finding a cure until he, too, slipped into madness. Many years later, Heenan returned to her old home, only to find 2 skeletons there, their rib cages blossoming with white flowers. Alice, you say, I think I've found something. Okay, so let's examine it. Okay, so the father had 2 daughters. Okay, so he brewed the potion. Bjorn kept taking it regularly. Heenan was wary and only drank a small amount. Bjorn studied the stars while her sister slept. So Bjorn got the waking death, it sounds like, from taking a large amount at the start. Then when the father found out, he got angry and he made Heenan consume more of his potion. She drank deeply, so she took a lot then as well. But she slept again. So it seems like taking a small amount is almost like a vaccine, where the body learns to fight it off, and then when you take more later, it actually has no effect on you. So that seems like a good clue, because then over time it says Bjorn grew weak and spoke only in riddles. So that's like the waking dead, right? Distraught, Heenan took his own potion, devoting every hour of the day and night to finding a cure until he too slipped into madness. So he did the same thing. He started with a large dose, not with a smaller dose. So it seems like for people who haven't had the waking death, we can give them a small amount of the lichen, and that will give them some kind of maybe not immunity, but some kind of tolerance or like boost to their immune system to fight off the waking death if they are exposed later. So let's see whether we can actually make that work or not. Let's share the tale. A moment Alice says, holding up her finger as she finishes a passage in the Golden Legend. Of course, but I really think... She jerks her hand up, the snout of her fox mask pointing straight at you. The Dweller's children. Why have none of them caught the waking death? What? Her fingers tap against the open pages in her lap. This page is about the first priest of the Hive Weaver, who invited his followers to douse themselves with pollinated water, believing it would immunize them to the stings of their sacred bees. Did it work? That's probably not, but it made me think, really think, about Aelwyn's sect. They spend so much time in proximity to the white lichen, yet none, as far as I know, were ever infected. What can we deduce from this? Some sort of resistance, maybe, you say. Perhaps the Dweller really does protect them. Alice makes a scornful noise at this suggestion. Or, you continue, could it be that a smaller dose of lichen offers immunity? Maybe that's what happened to our test. Before she can reply, you show her the pages about Hlaplan and his daughters, describing to her the tale of potions and banished sleep. White flowers, she says, climbing to her feet, the book still in her hand. Gamel, this could describe the very same sickness. Reflect upon the discovery. Oh, and rid of that again. We should act with haste, Alice says. Organize a low dose for as many people in town as we can. If what we have learned and observed is correct, I'm certain it will slow the rate of new infection. The three of you are reunited in the sanctuary cellar, having exchanged the latest developments in your medicinal pursuit. I appreciate the need for urgency, Ioka says, lifting his mask to take a gulp of water from a simple wooden cup. But this theory, there is still much about it we do not comprehend. Will a small dose of lichen result in protection against the waking death for all to whom we give it? What if we are mistaken and the plague spreads further at our own hand? Now we are sure what occurs if we give a small dose to someone who is already infected to some degree, Alice replies, echoing more of your shared concerns. I'm not ignoring these risks. She pauses and sighs. Our time will soon be spent. The best course would be to further testing, but we do not have those days to spare. Sorry, got to drink some water. Oh, that's better. Oh, my throat is so dry. It's my own fault though, because I broke my own rule of having a cup of tea. When I record, I don't have tea, I just got water, so definitely my fault. What of a cure, you ask? We continue to search, but if we should fail, with this technique, we may at least spare those who have remained free of the disease. Unless we're wrong, Ayoko warns, placing the cup back down, and advance our own fate, along with every person left in this town. We have barely any lichen left to make a difference. Perhaps what few doses we can. See, I guess again, it's game choices, right? I guess at the time when we had the chance, we could have just got more lichen. But I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but I don't know why from story context we can't go and get more lichen now. But that time has passed, I guess. We have barely any lichen left to make a difference. Prepare what few doses we can. I don't think we need to worry about hastening the spread of waking death, you say, gesturing towards the containers in which the remnants of the white lichen are stored. From what I can recall, we have a scant amount left, enough for a handful of measures, nothing more. We would effectively be performing second round of testing, Alice muses. Expanded, but not by much. Ayoko sighs. Then I suppose the two of you are decided. Very well, I would ask only that any who are given such a dose are informed of the possible risks. Of course, you reply. The question is, to whom shall we offer it? I propose that we cover a handful of subjects from all districts, rich and poor, Alice says, to see if any further pattern emerges. Should we include the new council in this process? She ponders this question. I think we should offer a dose or two to our authorities, whether they opt to take it themselves or hand it off to a loyal supporter. The outcome will be much the same for the purposes of our experiment. Send Marilla with those particular elixirs, Ayoko suggests. She has a direct manner and can convey the medical theory behind our actions. That leaves just one other matter, Alice says. We should spare enough for the three of us. Not for me, Ayoko says, shaking his head. One of us has to remain standing in case the two of you wind up poisoning yourselves. Well, let's prepare the doses. As you begin preparing the doses of lichen, Ayoko takes his leave to dispatch Marilda as your herald. You are working side by side with Alice when he returns. It took some persuasion, but the prioress is on her way, he says, joining the pair of you at the bench. Gloved hands work in silent concentration as you seek to replicate the lower dosage given to one of your volunteers. The lichen blossoms are crushed before being distilled and then reduced. Further herbal components are added to soothe digestion. Pinches of aniseed and meadowsweet, intended to keep the medicine down in bellies left sensitive by days of hunger. Each step of the process takes time and care, and as Alice wedges the stopper into another individual vial, you find yourself unable to prevent the escape of a loud yawn. I believe Gamel is trying to hint at the hour, Ayoko says. Even behind the boar mask, you hear the mirth in his voice. Very well, Alice nods, placing the vial down with its companions. We've made fine progress, and these measures should be left to rest for a few hours. Turn in for the evening. I don't know why, but I have a horrible feeling that they're going to be gone when we come back in the morning, or smashed, or otherwise unusable. The stonework of the courtyard fountain feels cold and uncomfortable against your back. As you gaze up at the sky, persistent wind, the same one that caused you to bundle up your robes and seek shelter behind the stone structure, has left cracks in the relentless march of the clouds, allowing occasional points of light to blink through. You ignore the creeping ache as the winter night assails your bones, focusing instead on those distant glimmers. Are they miniature suns, the faraway eyes of watching deities, or simply another act of nature, like the snow or the rain? You grimace as you shift in place. Another jutting section of loose stonework prods against your shoulder blade, perhaps with a better vantage point. Your gaze falls upon a familiar outline in the southeastern corner of the courtyard. Colossal and ever-present, the sanctuary tower stretches upward into an embracing shroud of black. It may not touch the points of light, but every facet of its vast structure seems, at this moment, to reach for them. Standing, you brush the piece of wet grass and flecks of frost from your robes and make your way across the short distance to the entrance. Make the ascent. Like its twin, the southeast tower's summit is open to the sky. You lie on your back, listening to the wind pirouette and collide against the parapet at your feet. Above, the night sky seems to sit closer, as if you are elevated upon the tip of a gigantic wooden finger. As you take in a deep breath, you try to imagine all of your fears and anxieties being drawn together in one spot. Then, with a forceful exhalation, you push them up and out, to be carried away by the wind. You repeat the exercise, watching the indistinct shapes of winter clouds pass by, as the faraway points of light seem to wink in and out of existence. For some time, you lie like this, until a particularly harsh gust of wind reminds you of your exposed surroundings. Feeling a little more at peace, you make the long descent back to the base of the tower and cross the courtyard towards your waiting bed, awake feeling rested. You stretch awake, surprising yourself with the lack of morning ache in your limbs. For the first time in days, you feel confident that your sleep has been somewhat restful. The sense of resolve lasts until you glimpse an ashen face messenger scurrying down the sanctuary hallway with tidings of dire consequences. Baron Morland's soldiers are mobilizing. Yeah, we kind of could see that from what we saw yesterday, right? There seemed to be more movement in the camp. Okay, and that is where we are going to leave that one. Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed. Hope you're keeping safe out there, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Actually, let me look at the stats before we go, because we haven't looked at them for a while. Okay, so hopefully people have stuck around. Right, so Physician 32, Surgeon 60, Mysticism 59, Presence 46, Panache 48, Resilience 54, all kind of the same. Still very compassionate, even though giving the bread to the people was absolutely useless, but still actually more than useless because it actually caused them trouble. We are more blasphemous than pious. We're still populist. We're getting even more principled than before. We're slightly more jovial, I think, as well. Or maybe slightly less, I'm not sure. We've done very well at sourcing the contagion. Our progress on the cure has now overtaken the spread of the infection, which is great. But I have a feeling that the spread of the infection may get a big bump now that the Baron has arrived. Or is coming, at least. Unrest is well above order. Revolt and Crown Favor, just on the side of revolt at the moment. Corvée has good popular support. Dweller influence is about the same as it was before. Okay, now let's see how we are doing with people. So Alice is still 75, Ayoko is still 46, and Lucia is 61. Okay, Sybil is 27. So she hasn't changed much, and it's probably because we spoke on her behalf that didn't change. Alviva Frit is still about the same, so is Rosalind, and Theobald is at 44 mainly because we chose him in the end. Okay, then turn to main stats and return to game. Yeah, so here is where we are indeed going to end it. So keep safe out there and see you next time. Goodbye. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, maybe consider hitting the subscribe button there on the right, or checking out some other videos here on the left, or perhaps you might even share with some friends.